Welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty and I bring light to the darkness of grief. So today's video, this is the first video in a 5-part video series. There is an introduction video that talks about each of the 5 videos. So if you want to check that out, you can certainly do that first, or you can just start here with this video, video number 1. And in this video, we are asking the question, what is grief and why do we grieve? So if you're here, it's likely because you've lost someone that you love. You've been thrown through for a loop. You're not sure what to do. And so thank goodness for the internet, for YouTube. I know how you feel. I felt very much the same way. And more than 11 years ago, when I came to YouTube or came to the internet at all, I don't know if YouTube was around then, there weren't the resources that we have here. So I'm so grateful to be able to share what I've learned with all of you. So when we ask the question, what is grief? Grief is the emotional response to loss. It's what happens to you from the very moment that you learn that your loved one is gone. Think of that moment, because I know you know that moment very well. The moment where you learned that they were gone. Everything that happened in your body, the physical emotions that happened, the thoughts that went off in your head, the actions that you took, all of those things are part of the grief response. And so that is what grief is. It's a response and a reaction to what has happened, to what you have learned. The reality is that most people are not prepared for the magnitude of grief. So if what you are feeling right now seems very overwhelming, I want you to know that you're not alone. You never really understand what deep grief is until it happens to you. So that might be where you're at right now. Now, a lot of people can talk about the feeling of grief, that initial feeling, as being knocked off their feet. I said at the beginning, you're being thrown for a loop. I had this feeling of being punched in the gut to the point where I lost my breath. If that's how it felt for you, let me know in the comments. And if you have another way to describe that feeling, that initial kick in the gut, kick in the teeth, thrown for a loop, however you define it, please let me know, because we need to be able to describe what that initial feeling is. Now, for me, I had a son, Jackson Robert. He was in the NICU. And I didn't ever think that he was going to die, even when we were in life and death situations in the NICU every day. He was less than 6 weeks old. And from the moment when I came home without him, the world didn't seem to make sense anymore. Everything seemed so surreal. That was the experience for me. And I knew that at that point, everything about my life was about to change or had changed. And it was all very overwhelming. So the question then is, well, why do we grieve? If we know what grief is the response to loss, then why do we grieve? We grieve because of the loss. And why we grieve is because we need to emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually process what has happened with our loved one, so that you can come to terms with what has happened and find a way to move on, to move forward, to continue living. And we have to grieve in order to continue to live ourselves. I often say that grief is not about death. Grief is about your life. Grief is about your loved one now being gone, not with you in physical presence, and you figuring out how to go on day after day without them. That's what grief is. And why we grieve? We grieve because we need to get to a place where we can keep moving forward so that we can live. Because the best way to honor someone that you've lost is to find a way to continue to live. And that's what this is all about. Now, some people will call coming to terms of the loss or coming to terms or healing with the term acceptance. You may have heard of that. The 5th stage of grief, as it's been coined, is acceptance. So coming to a place where you accept the loss. Now, I'm going to talk later about how I don't think acceptance is the complete place where we want to go. We want to get there for sure. But I think that there's more than that. And so we're going to talk about that in some other videos. But I want to share with you a quote that is one of the most profound quotes that I've read when it comes to grief. It has really guided me on the path of my own grief journey. And it just carries so much meaning that I could never say these words any better. So here it is. And I want you to know this because it's super important. So listen to these words, play them back again and again. Grief is not a disorder, a disease, or a sign of weakness. It is an emotional, physical, and spiritual necessity. It is the price we pay for love. It is the price we pay for love. I think that's so very important because people ask me all the time, am I doing this wrong? Is this normal? I don't think I should be feeling this way. Grief is not a disorder, a disease, or a sign of weakness. It is something that you have to go through. It is the emotional, physical, and spiritual necessity. It is the price you pay for love. And we're going to talk more about that. And then finally, I want to mention mourning because people talk about grief and mourning. The best way I've heard mourning described is when you're mourning someone, when you're grieving someone. Mourning is that grief in action. So mourning is the actions that you take as a result of the grief that you feel. It's the things that you do in response to the loss. And it could be positive things that come out, right? Sharing with the world who they are, who they were to you, what they meant, why they were so important to you. It could be the things that are not so great either. It could be the destructive behaviors. It could be the negative things that you say. It could be the anger that comes out. All of these things, I don't want to coin them as good or bad. They are the grief process. And so some of that we all have to own. So we have to own that we grieve. We have to own that we mourn. And we have to make sure that we're doing the work. And that's what this is all about. So I want to remind you that we do have a grief journal that I created. This is an amazing place to start. If you haven't gotten a copy of this, I want to encourage you to do so. Subscribe to this channel for sure so that you'll get the rest of the videos and the other videos that I have on my channel. New videos are coming out every single week. And then if you want more additional support, I want to encourage you to reach out to me directly. Definitely comment on the videos, leave your questions and comments below. But if you want to reach out to me specifically, I always want to encourage you to do that. So you can reach out to me at griefinspired@gmail.com. And we'll talk more in another video exactly why I call it Grief Inspired. But for now, take care of yourself, and we'll see you in the next video.